But we had a great week of vacation. Did miss being with you guys last Sunday, although not as much as I probably missed sitting on the beach like as I was last Sunday. But before we went on vacation, there was a lot of things that kind of took place and a lot of events that happened that jeopardized our vacation from happening. It seemed like one day we were going, and then the next day we weren't, and then the next morning we were, then that night we weren't. And so my wife, April, she began to say, maybe we just shouldn't be going on vacation. Maybe that's what's going on here, is we're not supposed to go, and this is just everything that's happening. Maybe we shouldn't go at all. And so I'm sitting here going, no, we're going on vacation because we haven't been in a while, and I want to go to the beach. And so I'm that kind of person. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just make it happen. I'll just force it to happen. And so we finally told the kids, hey, we may not be able to go on vacation, and they were gracious and acted like they weren't upset about it. It's fine, it's okay. And finally, the day before we're supposed to leave, we figured out, okay, we are going. It is going to happen. We tell the kids we're going, and then Montana goes, yeah, I got a bad feeling about this. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm sorry, but we're going. And so last Saturday on our way down, that kind of became a topic. It was said once or twice, I've got a bad feeling about this. And we get to about 2 hours from our destination, and we have to pull off the exit, and the van's just shaking, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what's going on, and pull off, and we've got a bad tire. And it's about 8:30, and everywhere close to us where the tire place is closed, and Montana goes, see, I told you I had a bad feeling about this. So we had to find a hotel, stay the night. I got up that morning, got the tire fixed, and we went about. But that kind of became the theme for the week, kind of the joke for the week. Anytime something bad happened or something that didn't go as planned, somebody would say, I got a bad feeling about this. Jace, he spent a couple of days before going researching sharks, okay? If you know Jace, that makes sense. He could tell us which kind of sharks were more likely to attack us. He could tell us when and why, and this one sand shark that would hide in the sand, so we have to watch and look where we're walking. And so I think he made himself a little more paranoid than he realized. And so when we were out swimming, it was kind of a common thing that Montana would then go to Jay, say, hey, I got a bad feeling about this. I think we're going to get eaten by a shark. And so, you just kind of seem to question things in life when something doesn't go as planned, okay? Such as not being able to possibly go on vacation. You begin to question, are we supposed to go? Should we not go? And so we all kind of do this in life, right? When things don't go as planned, we begin to question. We begin to think maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And we always seem to question when things go bad, even when it pertains to God. Even when it pertains to our relationship to God, or when God is asking or calling us to do something, we will even question God if it doesn't seem to fit into our plan or what we think things should be. We don't ever question when life is good. That's something we don't typically question things when things are going well. And so it kind of brought me to this point this week where I asked myself, is it okay to question God? Or when is it okay to question God? There are several people in the Bible that we can look to that we can say, quote unquote, may have questioned God. You have David. Okay? David asked how long. He was in a time of waiting to hear from God, and so he asked the question, how long? And then you got Moses, who asked, who am I? God was saying, you're going to go and you're going to go to Pharaoh and deliver the Israelites from captivity, and Moses is saying, well, who am I to do this? And then Job asked God why. And so we have these people who have questioned God, but when we think of people who have questioned God, there's one person that kind of jumped to the front of my mind, and his name was Gideon. And we're going to be in Judges chapter 6. In just a moment, we're going to read verses 12 through 17. But Gideon is that person that we think of who questioned God. And here in the beginning of Judges, we find that the Israelites are again worshiping other gods. Okay, if you go back and as we just kind of mentioned Moses, Moses had delivered them from Egypt, and they got into the promised land. And they are here, and they're now again worshiping false gods. And there is a group of people, there's a nation of the Midianites who have now begun to oppress them. They're not in a slavery. They're not being forced to work their lands or do all that stuff. But they are fearful of the Midianites. They are coming in and they destroy their crops. They take their cattle. And so they've had to flee and hide and live in remote areas. And so they've gotten to a point where they are crying out to God. They are a broken people. And they're saying, God, we need you to again deliver us. And so God sent an angel of the Lord to a man named Gideon. And we find this conversation that takes place between the angel of the Lord and Gideon in verses 12 through 17. And it says, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied. But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. I can imagine right now, that Gideon is probably thinking nothing is going as the way it should be. This isn't how things are supposed to be. Our ancestors talked about this God that did all these signs and all these wonders, and here we are being oppressed again. Here we are having to run away and hide and flee. And I'm sure Gideon probably didn't understand what was going on. Why is God not here with us? And sometimes we discredit something God says because we don't understand what or why. Okay, I want you to hear that. Sometimes we will discredit something that God says because we don't understand what or why. We continue it with verse 14. It says, the Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Again, pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied. But how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. Gideon replied, if now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. And then at that point, Gideon and the angel of the Lord, they go through a few things, and it is revealed to Gideon that this is God speaking to him. And as I was preparing this message this past week and talking with April about it, she kind of proposed the question, who is Gideon? Not in the sense of I've never heard of Gideon, I don't know who Gideon is, but who was Gideon? What was special about him? What was so important about him? And my quick response was, well, nothing. He was a nobody. And if we read it and we look at it, it says that he was from the weakest clan, and he was the least of that clan. So in his description of himself, he was the weakest person there was. So no wonder he was questioning, God, you're going to ask me to go and defeat the Midianites. He was in a place where he was asking God, he's questioning God because he was unsure of himself. He was unsure of his own ability. He was not confident that he could do what it was that he thought or believed that God was calling him to do. But finally, Gideon agrees to go and build this army. And he gathers up 32,000 men. So Gideon is ready to go. He's ready to fight, except for he's not. After he has got these 32,000 men, after all these people have replied to the weakest of their clan, Gideon goes to God and asks God another question. Okay, God, if you're really going to use me to defeat the Midianites, then I'm going to lay out a wool fleece. And if there is dew only on the fleece and nothing else, okay? So I'm going to put this out, I'm going to lay it on the ground overnight, and when I wake up in the morning, if the fleece is wet and nothing else is, then I'll know that you are going to be with me. I'll know that you have called me to go and defeat the Midianites. And so that's what he did. And he woke up that next morning, and it was so. The fleece was wet, and he wrung it out. And so he goes to the troops. It's like, okay, we're ready to go fight. Except for he didn't. He comes back to God one more time and says, okay, God, don't be angry with me. I have just one more request. I want to do the opposite of what we did this last night. I want to lay out the wool fleece, and this time I want it to be dry. I want everything else to have dew on it. And so he goes to bed, and he wakes up the next morning, and it was so. I think we all have these moments in our lives where we question, what is God doing? Or why is God asking me to do this? Or we all have those questions, or those times where we think, okay, I just don't understand what's going on. And so I asked the question before, is it wrong to question God, or is it okay to question God? And I don't mean questioning God's authority or God's sovereignty. I'm not talking about questioning God's essence or questioning who God is or anything like that, but I'm asking about questioning the what and the why. Earlier we mentioned several men who did go to God with questions. David and Moses and Job. And there's a way, there's a specific words that Gideon used the last time he went to God. It's a very strong indicator of where his heart was and what his motives were for asking God or questioning God. He said, God, don't be angry with me. Coming to God and saying, I know your authority. I know your sovereignty. But I just got to make sure. I just got to be sure, because he wasn't confident in what was about to happen in himself. He was about to go to war. His life could be lost. He could lose this war. If he's wrong, if he misunderstood God, then he was leading Israel to a battle that they weren't supposed to go to. And I think as Christians, we often struggle with this idea, is it okay to question God? Is it okay to bring our questions to God? And we just sit back and we just say, we have to do this. And don't mishear that statement. We are always to obey God, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we oftentimes forget that God is full of grace. We never once see God get angry with Gideon. Okay? He actually questioned God 4 times. Okay? He questioned him twice before he agreed to go get an army, and then he questioned him 2 more times after he got the army. And God never once gets angry with Gideon. Never once does he deny him the request. Never once does he say, no, I'm not going to answer your question. God could have come down to earth with all of his power and might and could have forced Gideon, or could have used the same fear that caused Gideon to question God. He could have feared Gideon into doing what he was wanting Gideon to do, but he didn't. He came graciously. He came as a father in understanding and walked and talked with Gideon through this process. I have a son who likes to ask questions. If any of you know my son enough, you know which son I'm talking about. If you've spent a minute with him, you know which son I'm talking about. Jace loves to ask questions. As a matter of fact, when he comes up to ask a question, he asks a question to ask the question. Such as, hey, Dad, can I ask you a question? You just did. You could have led with your question instead of asking the question. But he likes to ask questions about anything and everything. And he likes to ask the same question 4 different ways. Okay? And there's other times that he likes to question. He likes to sometimes question my authority. Okay? I may say this is what's to be done. He wants to question my authority. Dad, I don't think so. What about, I have to stay calm, which sometimes isn't always the case, but he knows if he questions my authority or something of that matter, or questions the way I want something done, he's going to get either a very stern look from me, or my response is going to be, I'm not going to answer that question. But then there's other times that he's just wants to be very thorough in his questioning. It may be, can Carson come spend the night? Okay? And so the way that process will go is he'll come up to me and say, hey, can Carson spend the night? Yeah, he can spend the night. Okay, great. 5 minutes later, so can he spend the night tonight? Yes, he can spend the night tonight. Okay, great. So can he come over at this time tonight? Yes, Jace, he can come over, spend the night tonight at 4 o'clock or 5, whatever time. Okay. Can we pick him up to spend the night? Yes, Jace. We can pick him up to spend the night. He wants to cover all areas or angles. Or it may be I'll ask him to go out to the van and clean out the van. And Dad, okay, so you want me to clean out this part of the van? Yes, Jace, that's part of the van. Well, do I need to clean out the back part? Yes, Jace, that's part of the van. Well, do I need to clean the floors? Yes, Jace, that's part of the van. But what he's really doing when he's asking all these questions, and in our humanity and my humanity can get frustrated sometimes, what he's really doing is he's coming to me and he's wanting to make sure that he does it exactly the way that I've asked him to do it. He's coming to me and making sure, I'm asking you these questions because I want to make sure that I understand exactly what you're telling me to do. I'm asking these questions because I don't want to mess it up. Gideon was going to God and saying, God, I want to make sure I fully understand what you're asking me to do. I want to make sure I fully understand that you are calling me, that you are wanting me to go and lead this army. He wasn't questioning his authority. He was coming to God for assurance and comfort. In 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7, it says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all of your anxiety on him because he cares for you. God has called us to cast all of our fears and our anxieties, our problems, our worries, the things go bad, things don't go as planned. He has called for us to go to him and cast all of them on him. See, Gideon had this army of 32,000, and through the process of elimination, God said, you know what, that army's too big. I don't want Israel to boast when this war is won or when this battle is won. So God shrunk that army. He began to weed away the army down to 300 men. And with 300 men, they went and defeated the Midianites. And I'm sure that there was some fear in that process. I'm sure Gideon had fear of, we had 32,000, now we have 300. But you see, there's a very important part of the story. There's a very important part of Gideon questioning God. See, the result was he obeyed. The result was that no matter what the circumstances came out to be, no matter if it was 32,000 or if it was 300 men, no matter how scared he was, he obeyed. He did not allow the fear to dictate his answer to God. He did not get God's answer and walk away. He obeyed God and gave his will over to God. And that's a huge part of questioning God. And I want us to kind of think for just a minute. I kind of want us to change our mindset just a minute of questioning God to giving our questions to God. I think those are two different things, okay? Just in the beginning, like David, he gave his questions over to God. He gave his will over to God. And there's one more person in the Bible that we can look at that you can say question God. And that man would be Jesus Christ. If we want to take a look at somebody who was 100% God, but he's also 100% human, and we find in the book of Matthew and Luke, when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying to God, if you remember his prayer, he said, if there is any way this cup can pass from me. God, if there's any way, if there's a different way, if there's any chance that this doesn't have to be me or doesn't have to be done this way or whatever the mind frame was, Jesus went to God the Father and said, if there's any other way, can it be done? And he didn't pray it just once, but he prayed it twice in the garden. And both times when he prayed, he said, but not my will done, but yours. God, not my will. See, Jesus was scared and he was anxious and he was coming to God the Father to get that comfort. The same way that Gideon wanted comfort, Jesus wanted the comfort and the knowledge and the understanding that yes, from God the Father, this is how it has to be done. And Jesus gave of his will and said, okay, God, I will be obedient to your will. When we ask, is it okay to question God? Are you questioning so that your will can win? Or are you questioning because you don't understand or in need of assurance and comfort? Two big different things. Are you questioning so that your will can win? So that you can do it your way, so you can have it your way, so that you can stay inside of what should be? So everything can go just as you've planned it to be, because sometimes God can shake up our lives. Or are you questioning God so that you can stay in his will and be assured by him that you are doing what he has called you to do? Are you willing to give over your will and accept whatever the answer is that God gives you? Are you willing to obey? Gideon was willing to do what God had called him to do. Yes, he may have had fear. And he may have asked God to give him assurance. But in the end, his questioning led to obedience. So this morning, I urge you to give over your questions to God. Maybe this week or this month or this year, God has been placing something on your heart. Maybe he has called you to step out and do something that you haven't done before. Maybe God is asking you something to do that you think is just so small and you just kind of ignored it because, as we said, when we kind of discredit what God is saying if we don't understand the whys or the hows. So maybe you're in that place where you just don't understand why. I urge you to give your questions to God. I urge you to be obedient enough to cast all your anxiety on God. I urge you to be faithful and obedient to what God has called you to do. And so this morning as we close, as Caitlin the band leads us in a passage, or in a song, will you obey? Will you be willing to ask God the questions that's keeping you from his will in your life?